What's up, everyone, and welcome into episode number 502, where it is my honor and privilege to introduce a special guest joining this episode, and that is Alma swimmer Brent Riehl. How are you doing, Brent?
Pretty good. Glad to be here. We've been talking about this for a long time, so glad to finally get it done.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that we're finally able to get it done. I know you're on your last year at Alma. I believe you're the first actually Alma swimmer to ever join. So, one, I appreciate that. But how does that feel? How does it feel to be a senior kind of towards the end of your swimming career?
Almost not real. This is my 13th year, so I don't really have a concept of what it's like to really not being in the pool often. I mean, my longest break since then was my freshman year, and that was only 7 months. So it's a weird feeling, but it's something that's gonna happen. So.
Has it gone by pretty fast though? Like the 13 years, does it feel like kind of like a big blur? Or does it feel like it's kind of led up to this point and you're kind of getting to the point of you're like, yeah, I'm kind of getting towards the end where I'm feeling like, hey, maybe it's okay to step away from the pool for a little bit after doing it for so long.
Honestly, I don't feel like that.
That's
Um,
good.
yeah, well, yeah, I suppose, yeah, but in my mind, I feel like I've had like almost four different like careers almost. Because the reason I kept swimming kept changing. When I first joined, it was just trying a new sport when I was 8. And then once I got into like middle school and I was on the middle school team, there was some competitiveness to it. Then obviously high school, it got even more competitive, and then college, it's a whole different level. So I feel like I've had like four careers almost, you could say. So
Yeah, because obviously when you start so young, like it's probably more of like, hey, let's just try to see if I like it. Obviously, the competitive feel probably isn't necessarily there. It's more about trying to figure out one, do you like it? Two, do you want to continue to do it? Then obviously you mentioned middle school started to get a little bit more competitive, high school, and then obviously college, which is one of the highest points of swimming that you can get outside of like the Olympics, USA, stuff like that. Those are difficult in itself, but starting that young, did you enjoy it at the very beginning, or did it take you a little bit of time to kind of figure out like, hey, this is fun, this is something I want to do?
yeah, so when I first joined my club team, I was 8, and at the same time I was playing baseball. And at the time that was sort of my main sport. Um and I had made a good friend over one like kind of summer camp, I believe it was. And then when I went
Okay.
in for some swim practice, he was there, and I had no clue that he even swam. So my first few years, I was with him, and then we obviously made more friends, and it was more of like I got to see them every day because I didn't go to school with him or kind of the other people that I had um, gotten friends with, and so as we just continued, we kind of all grew together, and then we kind of started getting more competitive with each other as we got older.
Do you think he's a big reason why you kind of stuck with the sport is because of how close you got with him with the other swimmers as well as you kind of went throughout your journey?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't want to kind of like do like a pick me here, but swimming's obviously a very grueling sport. Even when you're young in high school, you got mornings, you got afternoon practice, you got your weightlifting. And then probably, the worst experiences I had was summer practices. We were swimming at 6:30 in the morning, and it was like 50, 55 degrees outside. So the cold, it would start to get to me every year. There was
Yeah.
times where, I definitely would have rather not have been showing up that early and swimming. And then, I had friends who would want to hang out later that day, but I was just so tired and I would just spend, my day sleeping. Um, but yeah, they're definitely a big part and as to why, I kept going. And then even now, you always, even though swim, it's an individual sport, there's always that team aspect. So you get to meet a lot of great people throughout your career.
Yeah, and obviously I'm sure that you still are friends, you still talk to some of your former teammates. You obviously have the teammates that you have right now, the teammates that graduated before you've graduated. Like, that's just the unique thing about athletics and especially swimming is how close you get with the people that not only your teammates with, but the people that you compete against. And you mentioned like you guys didn't go to school together, but you got so close because of going through that grind daily, especially the early morning practices during the summer. That's not necessarily fun because I'm sure no one wants to wake up at 6 o'clock in the middle of summer when you can stay up until like midnight, 1 o'clock. But for you, that wasn't probably an option. Or if it was, you probably paid for a little bit in practice.
Yeah, for sure.
So obviously, with the sport and as grueling as it was, especially for as young as you joined, when did you kind of realize like swimming was a sport for you and just how did you end up becoming a distance swimmer? Because we'll talk a little bit about the events you swim now. You're not a distance swimmer anymore, but you were at the very beginning for the most part.
Yeah, so like I said, I played baseball right when I started swimming. So probably I was maybe 14 or 13 when I kind of told my mom and grandpa that I didn't really want to continue. Um, I wasn't necessarily the best or the worst, but I think that I was better competitively at swimming. There was more fun to it as well. And then when we got to middle school, my sixth grade year, they actually got rid of like they made it to where sixth graders couldn't join sports.
Okay.
So I ended up not swimming my sixth grade year. I just did club. And then the next year, we had some of the eighth graders, obviously, they graduated. And there wasn't really anyone actually in the whole city who could swim the 500. I believe at like our little city meet, there was just like one heat and there was like six of us. And so
Okay.
then my eighth grade year, they actually got rid of the event, and so that opened up, I was able to do some other events because at this point I was a pretty well-rounded swimmer. I could do all the strokes and everything and, do IM and stuff. Um, but during my eighth grade year, the high school coach, he would actually come to some of the middle school meets because at the time when he was coaching, we were pretty competitive and he, wanted to, meet some incoming freshmen just so he kind of got it out the way. And right when I met him, he told me that no matter what, I was still gonna swim the 500. So
Okay.
I was kind of stuck with it my freshman year. Um, and yeah, I just trained it my first 3 years. We'll talk about the switch later. Um,
What was it like training the 500? Because obviously in high school, I believe there's no such thing as like the mile, like the 500 is kind of the main distance event. Like obviously maybe you've swam the mile maybe a handful of times, but like being kind of that freshman, sophomore, junior year of high school, kind of being one of those people that were swimming distance. What is life like as a distance swimmer? Like, is it awful. Like it to me, like it feels like you're swimming thousands and thousands of yards and you're just constantly looking down at a lane line. Like there's probably everything and anything you could think of, like during a set.
yeah, you definitely have to have a certain background if you're a distance swimmer. I mean, practices alone in high school, freshman and sophomore year, we were hitting 10K a day. Like it was like nothing almost. Our coach was very old school. If you want to think of like a football coach who would make, his athletes run stairs, do all these sort of things, we were like doing that as swimmers. And we kind of had like the reputation of like practicing, not that we were, practicing the hardest of all the sports, but I had friends who played football and they were even saying that like they couldn't do some of the things that we were doing. Which looking back on it, some of the things it was probably overtraining for sure, but we were hitting 10K a day like it was nothing, I remember actually we would walk into practice and on the whiteboard it would just be, like a 500 skip warm up, 10 200s. Actually, it'd be 12 200s, 10 100s,
Okay.
8 75s, then 650s. And we did that, pretty often. It wasn't uncommon to see that. And they weren't easy times too. I think my freshman year, we were doing the 10 200s on like the 220, and I wasn't even making them, or
Okay.
even like the hundreds and fifties and 75s that we would do. But our coaches made us do all the yards basically as fast as we could. So there was one time actually, me and my two friends, we were given 875s on the 45, which now, I mean, my fastest 75, I think, has been like a 33.
Okay.
So doing 8 on the 45 from the wall, I would like to think I could do it. I don't want to say I could easily, but, I was a freshman in high school. I was like 5'3", like maybe 100 pounds because I was so small too. And we didn't even I remember this set like it was yesterday almost. We got to the wall after the first one, and my friend who was going first, who was a very talented swimmer, he was a D2
Okay.
caliber athlete. He unfortunately couldn't swim in college because his shoulder was messed up. But he didn't even make the first one, and I just saw him go right past me, and I knew that, during a set like that, it was just gonna be 875 straight. We weren't getting any rest at all. So those first 2 years as a distance swimmer, definitely grueling. Junior year, we had COVID, so we kind of, every program had to, adapt, and so we weren't necessarily doing as many yards, but it was still a great chunk.
It truly seems like that was kind of a moment that you either found out if you really enjoyed the sport or not. Because for most people, when they see that set or hear that set, if you have to do it like every single day and you're not making it overall, like there not only has to be obviously a physical toll that comes with it, but there also has to be an incredible mental toll as well. Like they're
Yeah.
obviously pushing you to your max. It's probably not really I don't know if it was expected for you guys to make it, but, like, when you see those sets over and over and over, like, when you walk in and you just see it, like, what are your thoughts? Is it more of just "Let's try to survive this," or more is it like, "It's just another day of swimming, and this is just what I'm used to?"
Definitely both aspects of that. I mean, some of the things we would do were definitely just surviving. Um, I really don't know what made us continue because looking back on that, I mean, it just straight up wasn't fun. But I guess me and, the team that we had, we were just, I don't know, I guess we just thrived for, like trying to like do hard sets and stuff like that. So we definitely, even now, actually, like last week, we we had a test set. It was 10 300s best average, and it was the day before a meet, which we'll talk about that later too. And when you get a set like that, there is that aspect of just surviving, but there's definitely also like a set standard that you have to do. Otherwise, you're
Okay.
probably just gonna have to do the set again. So that was kind of our mentality back then. So.
Do you enjoy test sets? Because obviously test sets are meant to push you, but it's also supposed to kind of demonstrate what a meet would be like. Like, is that really like kind of like a moment that like you kind of realize like yes, it is difficult, it's supposed to be difficult, but you kind of like strive and thrive in those sets because you know that like, hey, this is supposed to be what a me is like. This is like how I'm supposed to like perform. Like there has to be a little bit of that competitive feel that comes into that.
Yeah, so I mean, there's different kinds of sets. I would definitely prefer to do fast 100s or fast 50s rather than 300s, averaging a certain time. Um, we've actually done that set twice this year so far. And the first time we did it, so the way Chris has, practices laid out, they're in a team file before. So I knew going into the practice what we were doing. I was
Okay.
trying to psych myself up and get ready for it, and I actually was better prepared the first time than the second time. But that first time, I mean, it was just, horrendous. The second time it went way better. I obviously, it was 3 weeks later, so, a bit more aerobically in shape. But yeah, there's also, the aspect of racing your teammates too. That's something Chris loves to say, like get out and race the guy next to you. That's also, a big part of swimming, racing the guy. You're not just swimming at a meet. You're not just gonna, swim back and forth. You're gonna go out there and compete to win.
Yeah, because obviously that makes you better is when you have that competition, when you push each other. That's what teammates are for. That's what teammates are meant to do is you have that competition, but you also want to make sure that you succeed, that they succeed as well. But I'm sure it had to be nice kind of knowing the set a little bit prior to that. But there's again kind of that mental battle of you're trying to psych your way up because you know that let's say like practice is at 3 and it's 2:30, you know that you're gonna have to deal with this set in 30 minutes. There has to be that little mental kind of edge and mental preparation that has to come for something like that.
Yeah, I was sitting in class when I saw what we were doing when we first did it, so it was weird trying to pay attention, but know that I had to, go do something that isn't necessarily fun. I love swimming, but there's definitely times where it's like, oh man, this isn't gonna make me happy.
Yeah, and that's what sports are for. Is sports are supposed to test you to make you better. It's not always going to be fun, but that's just kind of the unique part of college athletics is just getting those opportunities to compete against some of the best swimmers in Michigan, swimmers in the country, stuff like that. And I want to kind of get into like swimming at Alma, how you kind of decided to do that. Like, when did you kind of realize that you wanted to swim in college, and just how did you find your way to Alma? Because once you got to Alma, we'll talk about this shortly, you have a pretty unique beginning to your career there.
Yeah. So, I used to do distance, like we talked about, and then junior year, me and two of the buddies that would do some of those test sets back in high school, and then a third person, we were going for the state cut and the 2 medley relay. And we were planning it out for months. I mean, the whole season, we were, trying to find like the best splits for everyone to go. And at the time, my fastest 50 in a relay was 24:50.
Okay.
And the only way we could qualify for states was if I went 23:50. Obviously, as a distance swimmer, dropping a second of 50. I mean, there's definitely room because, you're not training for the 50, so it's not going to be your best time. But it's also hard to comprehend how to sprint as a distance swimmer. Um, and I actually remember the first time I learned how to windmill or straight arm. Straight arm is kind of the more like modern term for it. But I
Okay.
remember our high school coach, he didn't like compliment it at all, but he also didn't like say anything negative about it. And I remember kind of like getting frustrated because I was just doing, the drills that we were doing, but I wasn't getting any feedback. And it turns out, I mean, it's obviously changed since then. It's been 5 years of me swimming. I've gotten better at it. But in reality, in the moment, I was pretty much nailing it right on. So when we got to our league meet, I ended up going 22:75, which
Wow.
was fastest split out of anyone in that relay, like across the board. So during that meet, I kind of made the, mental thought process that I was gonna ditch, distance after this, and started sprinting, which was unique because I still had to swim the 500, and then back then the 2 free is a distance event. Kind of, it's not in college at all. It's considered a sprint. I would consider it a sprint too. But yeah, so then I started training for sprinting. I swam in a few meets during the summer and I started going like 23 twos, 23 threes, just from a normal flat start. And then during high school season, we ended up getting a new coach. So the coach I had for the past 3 years, he stepped down and we brought in
Okay.
a new head coach and assistant coach. And it was definitely unique because this was his first time coaching, and this was also not my first season sprinting. And this was also the first time ever in my career that I was, like, actually competitive because the year before, I probably wasn't top 10 in the 500. I was probably, like, 12th or 13th, which, I
Okay.
mean, that's a B Heat final, which you can say that's competitive, obviously. I think now, I have a higher standard than that.
Yeah.
But, so we started to, like, learn what I needed to focus on, how to race the 50 and the 100. At the same time, he was learning how to coach a team, and so was the assistant coach. So when it came to, like, recruiting my senior year, I kinda mainly did it all on my own, and I don't even remember what app I used, but I just threw my times in there. And I ended up emailing, I believe it was 7 schools. Some of them got back to me, some of them didn't, unfortunately. Um, but then eventually, my friend Maddie, who she went to Alma, she has
Okay.
just graduated, she swam. One day I was sitting, just in school, and she had given me, our coach's number because he had some interest in me. And so I started talking to him for a little bit, and I was still talking to some other schools. And then ultimately, it just came down to me. I had a school in North Carolina that I was talking to. They were probably my top two, with Alma. And it just came down to, being closer. I had done an overnight visit at Alma and I had got to meeting the team and everything.
Okay.
And it just felt, more home. It felt like more of a real, option than, traveling across the country. Not that I think, that would have been bad. But I definitely think, going here has given me a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, because obviously the transition to college in itself is difficult on its own. Like it's different, especially for a non-athlete. Just going to college, it's a different place. It's a different city for most people. Sometimes, like people that live near Elma might go to Elma, stuff like that. So it might not be obviously the biggest transition, but like if you would have went to the school in North Carolina, that would have been a dramatic difference for you going that far comparatively to staying at Elma, so that would have been even a bigger kind of transition change for you.
Yeah. That wasn't even the farthest school I was talking to, too. There's a school in Arizona, which now at Alma, I met my good friend Ryan Gray. He's just graduated, but he's from there. So it's kind of weird to think that, I almost went out there that far away from here. So,
You could have been swimming outside for 4 years though, in
yeah,
Arizona.
man, not that I wish that could be the case, but that would be an experience for sure. They got some good pools over there.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, if you're a backstroker, I'm sure it's probably not super fun to swim outside because obviously there's the sun, but for freestyle, it probably wouldn't affect you too much. I know you do different events. We'll kind of talk about the different events here shortly, but it would be pretty fun to swim outside all year round. I know I've had I think an Arizona State guy on that he's like, "Oh, it's great. I love it." I've had a guy from Florida and he's like, "It's great. I love it." Besides, if you're a backstroker, they said it's absolutely awful to be that.
Yeah, it's fun. During our uh training trip, which is in the summer, we go down to Florida and it's definitely unique compared to swimming in the Alma pool, swimming outside. It's always a good time.
Are you excited for your training trip?
Yeah, I mean, we we got a lot more people this year, so it's gonna be interesting. All flying down there at once in training, but it should be a very good time. We're going to the same area too, so same pools, same hotel and stuff. So it'll be nice to know what we're going into.
Yeah, and also get away from the snow, the cold weather, stuff like that, and getting to enjoy your training a little bit. So you did talk about kind of when you started sprinting. You started with like 25.5. You end up working your way down to like 22, 23 seconds. What clicked for you? Because some people might say, like, hey, that's not a ton of time. Like, it's only a few seconds. But in swimming, there's races that are decided by milliseconds. And people, I don't think, realize of how much time, especially as a sprinter, that is because you don't just drop multiple seconds. Maybe like taper stuff like that, you might drop like a second or two, but like that's just not normal for a sprinter to do.
Yeah. So it obviously clicked that junior year during that relay. Um, but what allowed that to happen, I guess, was my natural ability just to windmill. Um, Even now, we had a meet last week, and my teammate, he came up to me after, and he knew how, he knew the concept of, straight arming, but had never, done it himself or really, seen someone fully do it. And the Saginaw guys do it too. So watching a whole field do it for the first time, um, the 50s, just a great event to watch. It can get you going, get you hyped.
Yeah.
Um, that's how I felt in high school too. I remember we went to Wayne counties and Northville, which is a high school up further north from where I'm from in Michigan. Um, they had a whole relay in high school. I think the average split was like 20.6 or something. And there
Was
was
it
a
really?
soft,
That's insane.
yeah, there was a sophomore who went like 20.2, I want to say. So watching them, straight arm in it, it's a violent technique, I wanna say, you're thrashing around, water's going everywhere, but I do find some beauty in it. I like watching, Crooks's 19.90, his 50-meter record. Um, it's just a great way to, like, fully see how, the windmill looks. Um, but yeah, so when I learned how to do it the first time, I was pretty confident with it, and then during that relay, the other big thing was just not to take a breath. And at the time, I thought that was just impossible. I had never been close not taking a breath, but just the adrenaline and, being in the moment, we prepped 5 months for this exact moment. So I was able to do it, no breath. Um, and, really for a 50, you just need a good start, good turnover rate. You shouldn't take a breath. I mean, in college it is only a 50. No
Yeah.
shade to if you can't. That's totally fine. But if you want to be competitive, that breath it'll add, like 0.20
Oh
really in
yeah.
a fit. Um, but yeah, so once, I had some of the pieces together. There's obviously still pieces I don't have, like my start. My start is you know, last week I swam the 50 against Saginaw and I rewatched the race and I popped up from my first underwater and I was in second to last and I ended up winning the heat. So obviously there's some uneven balance in my race. But during that relay I had, most of the boxes checked. So that's when I kind of realized, hey, if I, hone in on this craft, I might be able to, go 22 next year. And then my senior year, I ended up going 22.2 from a flat. So that was, a big jump from 24.5 to 22.2 in 1 year. So
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And you did mention that in the last meet that you had, your first meet of the year, you were second to last, and then you end up winning the meet. Like you sometimes see, like people that maybe doesn't have like the best start, but they just like come back, and it's some of like the most fascinating, and exciting things to watch. Like outside of like the 4x1, like you can say like the 50 might be one of the most fun, exciting races to have, and it's over in 20, 25 seconds at the most. Like, it's just super fun to watch, and you mentioned, like, no one's taking a breath for it. I'm sure it's probably pretty easy for you now. How far can you go, do you think, without taking a breath?
so Chris here at Alma, we do this thing called a Joe Bottom, just for
Okay.
some little bit of a history lesson. Joe Bottom, I think he swam for Michigan, but he was the first person to break 20 in the 50, I believe. I hope I'm right on that. But The legend goes that he would end every practice with a 75 off the blocks, no breath, as fast as he could go. So pretty often here at Alma, we will end up doing one of those. The first time we did it was in Florida during our training trip my sophomore year, and I unfortunately I took one breath. It
Okay.
was on the third length halfway down, but I think if I real you know, if I took a day to do it, I think I could do a 75. It's not something that I think is necessarily important right now to focus on. So often when we end up doing the gel bottom, um, I end up just doing like my 100 breathing pattern just to work on that because that's something that me and Chris have changed over the last 2 years here. Um, but yeah, probably I think the most I could do is 75 yards. I think that is feasible. It'd be hard, but it's definitely feasible.
In my opinion, that's pretty impressive, but for a sprinter, that's probably, I don't want to say super common, but at least for a 50, like it's probably super common, especially at the
Yeah.
college level, not to take a breath.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started sprinting, that was one of the mental notes I had on the block was to not breathe. Now that I don't think about it at all, it's just kind of secondhand nature to me at this point. So once you do it, I think it's mainly a mental thing. There's people even on our team that I keep telling them that they can do it. They just have to do it once. And it is a pretty big mental jump, to do that. But yeah, I think it's more mental than, physically.
Yeah, as long as you get it like that once, couple of times, once it becomes a pattern, like it's just like you said, it's not something that you think anymore. It's just something that you do. And as you said, like when you first began sprinting, which was your junior, senior year, that was like a mental block that you had to go through. But you also went through another block. It wasn't a mental block, but when you got your freshman year at Elma, you went through a situation where you were away from the team for a little bit. You mentioned 7 months. What was that like kind of going through that transition of not only from high school swimming, but to college swimming, then truly kind of being away for a sport that you've done for so long, for as long as you did? Like for most people, that transition in itself is difficult, but then you were away from the sport because of what happened.
Yeah, so it was very unique. When I had gotten the news, it was during our training trip, and it was like the second day in. So now I was given the ultimatum of, okay, I have to continue training here and like kind of have a happy face, knowing that essentially that the training was pointless to a certain degree. Um, And then, during COVID, I had only like a 5-month break before I was back in the pool, maybe 6 months, but I went 7 months without swimming. Actually, when I got back from training trip, I kept training. I swam on my own still just because, I mean, that was just, my life, just, swimming every day. Um, but I got really into weightlifting, which was something that I needed to. In high school, we didn't do it a whole lot. We probably only did it like 5 times in those 4 years. Um, so I started weightlifting every day on my own. Um, and that was another goal that I needed to, kind of focus on was gaining weight and everything. So as much as it sucked, I do wanna say looking back, it was kind of a blessing in disguise. 'Cause I not only, learned things outside the pool, right? I had to, focus on school more and stuff like that, but I was able to, on my own learn the weight room. So when we got back and I was doing these team lifts, um, I, felt comfortable and everything. Um, so yeah, it sucked overall because I had to just watch the rest of the season. I couldn't train with the team. I couldn't even be on the pool deck when they practice and stuff like that. Um, and I actually my freshman year of the MIAA championship. I watched it on YouTube. I watched every single day of it, and I kind of had this grudge because every time an Alma swimmer swam, it was almost like we weren't even there to begin with. The announcers were just kind of like in lane 8, from Alma, this guy, and then like that was it, you know. Um, so coming back from that, there was definitely, I wanted to put us out there, and that's a goal I still have. I obviously, individually I swim, but I want people to, not that we aren't respected, but I definitely would want our reputation to be a bit more intimidating in our conference than it is, and that's a big goal that we have this year. Um, so yeah, as much as it sucked, I think I learned a lot from it, and I think that even the team learned a lot from it because they were very helpful and understanding. They had my back the whole time, and they also knew that I could come back. Um, and even after I came back that sophomore year, we didn't have a coach for the first half of the season. So
Yeah,
we talked said, I had that mental block freshman year. And then now I had just gone through my own thing, but now the whole team had this huge problem. We didn't have a
yeah,
coach until
exactly.
December, and we had, a senior who had just graduated. Um, she was still at Alma for her teaching degree. I don't know the name of it, but
Okay.
she was doing a lot for us. And then the athletic directors were kind of like our coaches too. They traveled with us. They were there every day, so they had our backs too, which was very nice. To have that support. But yeah, the looking back on it, it was a blessing in some aspects, and I'm not glad it happened, but I'm glad that I responded to it the way I did and that others did around me.
Exactly, because your start to your swimming journey in college is unusual, right? Like you might have some people that might have like a coaching change and a new coach comes in. That happens a lot. Like you mentioned, like you now have a new coach in Chris. He's been there for 2 years. It sounds like you guys have a great relationship. Sounds like he's been extremely helpful building not only you as a swimmer, but obviously as a program as well, but I loved your perspective on how you viewed what happened because for some people, being that long away from a sport that they've done for so long, there's a couple ways that you can view that, especially kind of the situation that you were in. You could have either viewed it as like an opportunity to grow, to get better, to truly realize how much you enjoyed swimming. And I feel like that's the way that you took. Or you could have viewed it as like, hey, like this situation isn't great. Like this isn't something I want to kind of deal with. I dealt with it freshman year. I'm kind of halfway through my sophomore year dealing with our coach. You could have possibly stepped away if you wanted to, and I don't think anyone would have faulted you for that. Because of like the perspective, because of what you went through, do you think that truly like solidified like how much you actually enjoyed swimming? Because you went through a lot and you're still doing it now and you're still setting records now and now a captain as well all these years later.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it made me realize how much I cared, obviously, for the sport, but at the same time, the reason it happened was also kind of my obsession for the sport. I would go to class, zone out, and think of swimming, a daydream, a 50 free almost. So, as much as, the sport has been a blessing, it was also kind of a curse too in that moment. But it for sure made me realize, how much I love it. I remember when I, figured out, I had to step away for a little bit, that it was weird because I didn't think of quitting once. And, the whole training trip went by and I got back and I was asked if I wanted to quit. And I kind of hesitated because I hadn't even thought of that. And I realized that, that's the kind of athlete I am, right? I'm not just gonna, hang it up here because this little slip up happened. Um, it's kind of like this year. Last year I had goals that were feasible. I didn't necessarily accomplish them, but just because that happened, I'm not, giving it up this year.
Yeah, it's going to motivate you more going into this year to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And I know one of the goals that you want to achieve, you just achieved in the first meet. You set another record at Alma. I believe that's at least four. Is that four, five? How many records do you have at Alma now?
Yeah, four. It's weird
Four.
because so in the 2028 Olympics, they've added the 50s of stroke.
Okay.
And I guess we're just counting the first 50 splits of the hundreds in college as their own events now. I
Okay.
think within the next few years, there will be a 50 breast, 50 back, and 50 fly in college. I think that's going to take some time to integrate, but I had no clue that, it was a record that we found out after the meet and stuff. Um, That's also kind of surreal because it was just the 100 breaststroke. In that first 50, I swam it like the 100 breaststroke. Um, my relay split is, a second and a half faster than that time. So there's definitely a lot of time I can shave down on that. So, it's great that it happened and it's definitely opened more doors too, because now I can go out and do the 100 fly, and that may or may not be a goal this year for me to swim the 100 fly a few times, but now there's the 50 fly split of that too that I can work on too.
Yeah, you just swim so many different events and so many different strokes too. Because for most sprinters, they might be like, hey, I'm only like freestyle. But then you have freestyle, you have breast, you have fly. You swim so many strokes. It has to be kind of fun, but at the same time, also trying to figure out what events you're going to swim. Is that a little bit, like, I don't wanna say frustrating, but, like, it's almost to the point of you're like, "I don't know exactly what events I wanna swim or what events am I gonna swim that day?" Like, it's almost like pick and choose what you're gonna do.
Yeah, that was actually looking back at conference last year. In the moment, I didn't think of it, but I think now that was a problem that I had because last year I had randomly started swimming breaststroke. I swam it at a meet against Hope, and I was really sick. My asthma was flaring up, and I ended up winning it. And I think when, it was under a second, I was off of the record. So then, I went up to Chris after and I was like, I guess we're adding this to the list. I don't know. And he was like, all right, yeah, we can do this now. So heading into conference, obviously you got three individual events you can do. At the time it was the 50 free, 100 free, 2 free. And then we didn't know if I should do the 100 free or the 2 free because they're on the same day. And then for our 8 free relay, I lead off. So that's just a flat start and that'll be like a normal time. So our process was kind of okay, let's see what I go Wednesday night.
Okay.
If I'm happy with it, then maybe we do the 100 breaths. If I'm not, then we can just do the 2 free. Um, and that was a decision that we made of the day. It was actually the morning of what?
Was it
No,
really?
night before, I think. I think it
Okay.
had to be the night before, but then the
Yeah.
morning of I still, like, in theory, could have been like, "Oh, I wanna do the 100 breaths instead." So, heading into Friday, I believe, is the t no, I think Saturday is the 2 free. Um, no, maybe it is Friday. I don't know. There's so many events now, I don't even know anymore. Um,
It's one day sometime during the meet.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, so we made the my lead off of the 8 free, what wasn't good at all, nowhere what we wanted. I actually went faster the first meet of the season than that time.
Did you
So
really?
we had yeah, it was conference was, a whirlwind last year, we learned from it. We could talk about that too. As much as a failure as it was, I think it was actually needed. Uh,
Okay.
but anyways, so we get to the day of the 200 free and we had decided to go with that. I swim it at prelims. Again, it was bad. And so heading into finals, there was things that we needed to change, and I ended up dropping, I think it was 6 seconds just, within those few hours. I went a PR. I was very close to the record. Didn't get it, unfortunately, but I think, when we talk about how many events I swim now, um, and adding in now the two breasts is an event I'm gonna try, and the 100 fly, that's, 6 events. Um, so there's definitely some balancing that we need to do. That's something me and Chris have talked about. He actually confronted me about it. He said, when are we gonna go for, half of these records? Because, we only got so many meets, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's something, we gotta go through. And yeah, like you said, sprint freestylers, don't, especially, in the D3 level, you got a guy like David Bajra, he was at Calvin last year. He, swam the 50 free, but that guy also, did the 2 back and like the 100 fly. So it's not definitely uncommon to see, sprint freestylers also excelling at other sprints. But balancing them all out is definitely challenging.
Yeah, exactly. And then you also have relays as well that you're a part of as well. So you have to balance what relays you're going to be on, who's going to be on the relay. Like there's just so much that kind of goes into swimming and just especially the conference meet. I feel like people don't understand obviously how much like preparation kind of goes into that. And I truly want to talk a little bit about conference meet kind of preparation because obviously the conference meet is the biggest meet of the year. Like you taper, you do everything to kind of like lead up to it to hopefully have the best meet that you have that year. And obviously, your meet didn't necessarily go the way that you wanted it to, but can you just talk about like the preparation that you kind of do before conference meet and then just talk about what is it like to swim at conference in front of thousands of fans? Like there's a packed swimming pool when it comes to MIAA conference.
Yeah, for sure. To start, I mean, in preparation, obviously the taper is the biggest part. And I want to say last year was the first time I like actually tapered because senior year of high school was my first time going to states in the 50 free and the 100 free. Um, and I had a brand new coach. I didn't know what I was doing, so the taper was, in all honesty, it was way off. I woke up that day really sore. I think I gained like 5 seconds in my 100,
Did you
and
really?
yeah, I was seated at like 48, and I think I went like 53. I mean, it was
Wow.
just horrendous. So I mean, that goes to show how important it is, right? My sophomore year, everyone, because Chris had come in my sophomore year, and he had come in during December. The first time we
Okay.
met during our training trip at the airport.
Well, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, throughout it was a month and a half. He got to learn us as athletes too, right? Um, And so we ended up basically everyone in groups had their own tapers. So the whole distance group had a taper, sprints had a taper, and then like, the mid distance IMers had a taper. Um, so last year was the first time we like all got to sit down one on one with Chris and Matt, who he's no longer our assistant coach. He's over at University of Pittsburgh. But we gotta
Okay.
sit down and like go over like, hey, what do we think is good? And I don't really know how we got to this point, but we decided that I needed a 16-day taper, um, which was the longest out of anyone on the team. Um, and it worked to a certain extent. I think it was fine. Actually, the Saturday leading up into the MIAA championship, we like wore old fast skins and we did like 50% of our race just to get a split.
Okay.
Um, I did 25 for the 50. I won't say what I flipped at, I'm not trying to leak too much here.
Yeah.
But, I flipped. It was a good split. And I was thinking, hey, like we had all this, chirp about me completing these goals. Now it's like, you flip at that, right, you're gonna be faster at conference, but all I had to do was come back at a 10 whatever, and, my goal was complete. Um, it didn't happen, but we definitely learned from it, and then, like you said, MIAA, very competitive. I mean, even just between Hope and Calvin, I mean, you know, the tension between, them at conference is insane because you got the Hope woman who I think the last 4 years, at least my time here, they've won it,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah, I
Calvin men.
believe the last 4 or maybe 5 years, Hope has won it, and then Kelvin, I believe, has won it 3 years, I believe, in a row
Yeah,
for
so it's
men.
like flip-flop. The men, yeah, the men always win, and then the, Hope women always win. So there's always that tension between, the opposites, um, if the Hope men are gonna win, and if the Hope women if the Hope men are gonna win, then the Calvin women are gonna win. Um, so, in high school, at swim meets, we had family there mainly, but, at conferences and the MIAA, we have, like, actual, like, fans and, like, the parents are really into it too. Um, I mean, they have, pom-poms up in the stands, and they have, cutouts of people's faces, it gets kinda nuts, and, even the athletes in general, right, we're a very good conference. I mean, I don't know if it was my senior year of high school or my freshman year when, the Calvin had a guy win the 50 national title, and
Sounds
they
about
always
right.
yeah, they always have a relay going, and then last year, David, I think he had 2nd in the 100 free and then, like, top 3 in the 100 fly or something like that, so obviously, competitive schools, right? Um, and that just the environment of, the Hope facility and the Calvin facility, I mean, it gets loud in there, it gets crazy, people are there to, win, right? I mean, as a swimmer, you train 6 months out of the year, it comes down to this moment, and, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Exactly. That's the you're training all the way up to that moment. Like, people don't necessarily wanna say, like, that moment is everything, but, like, in swimming, it truly is. Like, that's why you taper, that's why you do everything to that moment so that you can excel at that moment. I'm sure being a part of like relays, like you've been a part of relays that have been like the Friday, Saturday night like relays, like it's just different. Like finals is just a different experience. And obviously, I know that you had some ups and downs last year, but I'm still sure that there's those moments that like you can still like think back to or still like remember that probably gave you a little bit of chills, not only on the pool deck, but when you're competing as well.
Yeah. I mean, even, back to my freshman year when I had to watch it, I mean, even just watching it on my computer, I mean, it was so loud. Even the announcers, I mean, they were, into it. Um, and, it was I believe at Calvin, so they even had, like, like, in between breaks, it was like, it was like watching, like, Red Zone almost, and they were, like, talking about certain guys swimming and all this. So, it's a really competitive thing here over in the MIAA, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, that's just the cool thing about not only the MIAA, but just D3 swimming as well. Like you have a great conference, but then if you do well at conference, you go to nationals. Nationals, I've heard, is kind of crazy as well. But before I get into kind of your senior year, kind of wrap up with that, you did mention that this past year was truly the first time that you went through like an actual taper. What are your thoughts on it now that you kind of experienced it? Obviously, it wasn't as maybe as effective as you thought it was going to be. Maybe it didn't go as well as you thought it would be, at least at the meet. But now, kind of going through actual taper, do you see why people enjoy it as much as they do being a swimmer?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, as a sprinter, we always do, less yardage as, the distance group, but we still kind of coordinate it to where like the practices are done at the same time, whether that's like we cool down for longer, warm up for longer. Um, but I mean, there was, a day where, like, we got out and, like, distance still had, like, half of their practice left, and we were just kinda standing there, talking, and then, like, 30 minutes goes by, and it's like, "Oh," like, they're still swimming, right?
Yeah.
Um, and, the Saturday before was probably my peak during that taper. I mean, I felt really good, it was 7 in the morning, I had no food in me, I was just off an energy drink, and I had, gone that, best split ever. Um, the taper definitely, I mean, it's hard to understand if you're not, a swimmer, just the concept, it's kinda weird itself, taking more rest while still training hard, um and then it just, it just gets you better, right? It's definitely weird to experience.
It's one of those things that I feel like it's hard to, like you said, it's hard to explain. Like for most people, like that has never been a swimmer, like they might not understand taper. They might not understand doing the whole like shaving stuff like that. Like they might feel that as like weird, but just kind of a part of being a swimmer.
Yeah, I rocked the buzz cut during a mid-season and conference, so it's not something I like. I don't like the look too much, but I mean, I'll buzz my head to, sacrifice, maybe dropping some time
I was just gonna say, being your senior year, are you gonna pull that out at MIAA conference meet?
for sure. I mean, I'm gonna do it for mid-season even,
Hey, whatever you can do to shave off more time, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I do want to ask a couple more questions. I know we're kind of running long on time, but this senior year obviously is your last year, but you're also a captain as well. When you hear that you're a captain of this team, what does it make you like feel, think? Like it has to be such a cool feeling to be from where you were to now being a senior, being a captain of this team, being someone of influence, being someone that helps people, being someone that people go to. Like it has to be like, kind of like a cool feeling, a cool story to see how far you've come in just a couple of years.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, bouncing back from that freshman year to be here now, it's, a great feeling knowing that I was right and trusting myself. Um, and I mean, the group that we have this season, I mean, I wish everyone I've ever swam with at Alma could experience it because I mean, everyone, is training with a purpose. Not that, other people didn't, but like everyone has goals, everyone wants to do this. Um, so, when I hear that I'm a captain, in a weird way, I don't feel like it, but I do at the same time because, I do have freshmen, ask me certain things, and I have, even juniors, ask me for some guidance, on the 50 and stuff. Um, but just to be around this group, I mean, it's been great so far. We had a bunch of, personal records set at the first meet. So obviously, we're doing good so far. Um, but yeah, just to hear all the accomplishments I've done so far after, where I came from. And even in high school, swimming in college wasn't like something I was actively pursuing. I had the idea that I wanted to, but I wasn't, taking time to like actually plan it out and stuff. So to sit here and, stand back and look at it from, like a third person view, it's great. And it's motivated too, it keeps me going because I can't just, stop right now.
Exactly, because you have your own goals that you want to achieve. Obviously, you have the team goals. You want to make sure that they succeed. You want to make sure that your teammates succeed in what they want to achieve, but you have your own goals, right? And obviously, the first meet that you had helped with that, but you still have a long year left to go. Like, what are you looking forward to the most? What are some goals that you want to achieve before you wrap up as a career, either at MIAA's or if you do qualify for nationals?
Yeah. So in terms of, individually and a team, there's a lot that we can accomplish. we're hoping for, team-wise, the best season we've had probably in almost a decade, points-wise. Um, I'm just going to say I think every relay record will be broken. I think 4 out of the 5 are guaranteed. The hardest one, I think, is gonna be that 4 free or the 8 free relay. That's gonna
Okay.
take some work, but, even, the incoming freshmen, they know that, like, that's possible, and so we definitely have that going on. Like you said, NCAAs, that's kinda my main one. Last year, I mean, my assistant coach at the time, Matt, he even had a dream the day before that I went, the B cut time, and so, it's weird to have these individual goals, but then to also have other people know that you can do it, I mean, that definitely, sets you up for success. NCAAs is my main one, but then also I have, my own records too. Um, I want to re-break them all, and there's some more that I know that I can break. That two free, it's still haunting me because at finals last year, I had talked to Chris before because I had gone up to him and I was just like, this is bad. Like we haven't accomplished a single thing and I'm like gone mentally. And so he told me, hey, just have fun, right? Me and him talked for a little bit in between sessions and I went into that two free and I wanted to drop a lot of time. Like I said, it was like a 5-second drop, maybe six. But then I also did want to have fun. So I remember heading into the 100 and I think I had like a body length lead. Um, and this was a PR2 free that we're talking about, and I went like 142.9 or whatever. And
Yeah.
I just remember I was almost like not messing around, but I was like very like visual where everyone else was. And I was kind of talking to myself mid race that like, oh, this is like who you are. Like it's not fully gone just because, this one me is going bad. Um, and then I remember heading into the 150 into the flip. I knew, the length I had on everyone else, obviously it was a good time. Because I mean, even the B heat, everyone in the B was still going a good time, right? So I knew that
Exactly.
I was doing pretty well. Um, and I remember telling myself, okay, I either rip this, next I believe maybe it wasn't the 150, maybe it was, the 125. So maybe I rip this last 75 or I just enjoy it. And I told myself to do both. And you kind of can't do both. You can't, just like be, insanely competitive in the moment, but then be like relaxed and enjoying it. Um, so, I was close to getting the record. And like the goal I had was 140. I went 142 high. Um, but it's still like I said, it kind of haunts me to this day knowing that I went that time, but I was also like kind of lollygagging, if you would. Um, not that, I wasn't trying. I mean, I swam it perfectly how I'm supposed to swim it. First 50, I did what I needed to do. Second 50, building it, and then third, same thing and whatnot. But that's kind of the biggest one that I have because I know that I was so close to breaking that record. That it will happen. Um, Now, obviously, I have the 100 breast record, and I guess technically the 50 breast record. So now the two breast record, every day I kind of look at it, and it's weird because, I think I can do it. But I think the last time I swam with two breaststroke, I was like 13.
Well, you
So
really.
yeah, we have like no clue I can go. I've never trained for it, I've never done it. We'll see what happens. Hopefully I get an opportunity to do it at least and see what I go. Um, Same for the 100 fly. I've swam it a few times. And last year when I swam it, I had to train fly. I was doing it almost completely wrong. I was like taking just one kick per stroke, and my dolphin kicks in general were even messed up. My feet were too far apart. I learned that
Okay.
over the summer. Um, so yeah, there's I think the sky's the limit this year for me individually. I have nothing to lose. And, those relay records, I mean, I think we're gonna wipe the floor with all of them. And then, like I said, we're hoping for one of the best team seasons in probably a decade, maybe even more. And everyone's on board with it too. And there's also other people who have individual goals too, like Eli. He got second last year at conference. I'm sure he wants to win the mile this year. Um,
Exactly.
then on the women's side, they had I think 2 free and 4 free records they got broken
Okay.
last year. And then the few other individual records were set too. But everyone has goals and everyone's helping each other work for them. And I think, this is gonna be a historic year for everyone here.
And that's the thing when like, you have, not only a good team, but a good team culture is everyone has goals, but everyone still wants to have fun with it. It's kind of like a little bit of a balance, like, you can't let your goals, like, get to you mentally, but you also have, like, specific goals that you wanna achieve, and it seems like the way you guys are approaching it, especially, individually for yourself, but as a team, is the right way of doing it, is just trying to get better every single day. I'm sure you've mentioned there's specific records you see on the board every single day, and you're like, I would love to have that record, that record, that record. That's probably something you're going to have to try to figure out with your coach exactly what you want to do, because hopefully you're not going to be in a similar position going into conference meet this year where you're like, what events am I going to swim? Like, I'm sure you probably have an idea of what you wanna swim, but, like, that's just the cool thing about having the ability to swim so many different events is you get to not only experience that, but you get to be able to not swim the same events over and over and over again, as I'm sure that probably gets a little bit old if you do that, but I'm sure because of the events you swim, I'm sure there's probably not one specific event that gets a little old for you.
Yeah, it's weird. I remember when I moved in, I was standing outside our athletic department kind of building, and I thought to myself that, it's crazy that I'm gonna get, the 50 free and 100 free record one day. That was a goal I had. I was close to it at the time. Um, and then I thought to myself, maybe by my senior year, I could get that 2 free record. Um, and now I'm sitting here talking about the two breast. It's definitely weird to think about that, but I mean, it goes to show. I mean, even the freshmen this year, some of them, they're saying, "Oh, I will never do the 4 IM or something like that," and maybe by their senior year, they're going to be the best Alma swimmer to do the 4 IM ever. So you never really know in college swimming. I mean, it can change.
Exactly. When you do set a record, I know certain teams, obviously, you get like a plaque on the board. Do you get to like k- keep that? Are you given one, or is it mostly just a plaque on the board and you're like, let me just take a picture of that, or is it just going to be like it's going to be up there until it gets broken and then you get your little plaque? Like, what do you guys do at Elma?
Yeah, I actually don't know if you get the plaque after someone else breaks
Okay.
theirs. I hope no one ever breaks mine. I'm just gonna say that right now.
Yeah, you're like,
Well,
I want that to be up there for the rest of time. I want Brent Riehl to be up there for once I'm like 80 years old and I'm coming back for like alumni me or something like that.
I think that's the coolest part. I mean, there's a record up there from like '95,
Is it
and
really?
I yeah, I think it's one of the woman records. But I think I think the fact that it could be that old of a record, I think that's enough of an award itself. Just it
Yeah.
being on the book for that long, it kind of living on there forever. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I do it for. Just seeing my name up there. Obviously, it's nice going to bed knowing that all the work that you put in, at least it's going towards something, and you can say that, hey, at the end of the day, I threw on this Alma A, and I'm the best person to do this event. So it's surreal, being able to have those records, and I'm grateful for it, and I really hope for a lot more this year.
Yeah, and hopefully those records stand for a long time. I know that's obviously a goal of yours. You just mentioned that, but I'm going to wrap up here with the one last question. I'm sure we could probably talk for another hour plus, but I don't want to hold you to that. But obviously, you've been swimming for a long time, and you're kind of getting an opportunity to take a little bit of a setback, kind of try to have a view of like your full career. I'm sure you probably have done that a little bit, done it on this podcast, probably going to do that throughout this year. Because of that, I want to end on this. What has swimming meant to you in your life? How has it helped you? How has it shaped you to be the person that you are today? And why should other people give swimming a try like you did all those years ago?
Yeah, well, first off, I think swimming in general is becoming more popular in terms of being like a healthy exercise option. Um, I, you know, I fell in love with the gym very early in college and I got into, watching like the Olympia and stuff like that. And sometimes I hear, these bodybuilders say that swimming's a good cardio option for them. And I'm just kind of like, that used to just not be a thing at all, right? And
Exactly.
obviously, I grew up with asthma and I started swimming and now it's basically gone every once in a while. It flares up, but I mean, it's a very healthy, exercise, I would say it's better than running. I don't like running. Um, so
I don't either.
there's yeah, you gotta be crazy to do that. I can't do it. But it's really meant everything to me. I walk in a room and people know I'm a swimmer. Like that's what I'm known for. Even in, high school when I'd hang out with my friends and, I'd be at their house, their family would be asking me, how's swim going and stuff like that. I truly think it'll always be like that. Even when I'm done swimming, I want to coach. I hope that that's a career I can pave and, it be my life and I'd be successful at it. Um, and I think it made me a better person because I am competitive at it. At the end of the day, I like to think I'm an athlete that swims. So, talking about, goals I have outside of swim and helps me drive to them more, whether it's like academics or something on the side that I want to accomplish. I think it's one of those sports where you get the benefits of being on the team and, having the team culture and everything and learning from others. But then you go behind the block and it's just you and everything that your coach has helped you with and everything and everyone else, it's all on you now to do it. And I think that's what makes, it a great sport to build yourself individually because you just learn a lot about yourself. I used to get scared to, race guys that are bigger than me and stuff. And I eventually, now I grew out of that, I'm gonna give it my best shot, even if, you're like 6'6", 180, whatever. Um, and, I think that's something that the sport does need a bit more of is competitiveness. But I think, in general, being competitive is not a bad thing. You can definitely be cocky about it, which is a bad thing. And there's some
Yeah.
people like that out there. But, if you're with the right people, you're doing the right things in the water, the benefits weigh out, the bad things, like getting up early and swimming in a cold pool. I mean, you're gonna learn things about yourself that you never thought you could do before.
Yeah, and then it's obviously, like you mentioned, a great workout as well. Like, it's going to get you in shape. It's going to be something that you can do for the rest of your life if you want to. I know some swimmers that do it for as long as you have. Some might say, like, hey, like, once I'm done competitively, get me out of the pool for a little while. It might be a little while to get back to it. Or you could take the approach of you're like, hey, I've been doing this for so long. Like, I just don't know what this is like outside of that. And I obviously don't know the approach you're going to take. I do know that you want to obviously coach, still have that impact. I do think you're going to be extremely successful at that. I do know that obviously you talked about how much swimming means to you, and I know that it's something that you love doing. I know that you love being a captain. I know that you're extremely excited for this year, and it's something that I'm extremely grateful that you're able to come on and talk about those things. I felt like we could have probably talked a lot longer about those things. Maybe we'll have you back on at the end of the season, kind of individually talk about how things went. I know that there's a real possibility you come on with a few teammates, which I'm obviously extremely excited about. But truly, before we wrap this up, I do want to say thank you again so much for joining. It's been a ton of fun. Hopefully, it was worth your time, and also best of luck this year. I hope you're able to achieve your dreams. I hope you're able to achieve your goals, and I think you're going to be extremely successful. And I really appreciate you joining, and you're welcome back anytime. The door is always open for you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we've been talking about doing this for, better part of half a year now. So to do it, it's great. I'm very grateful that you were able to get me on here and,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I really truly hope that you had fun. I definitely had a lot of fun, and yeah, I really appreciate you. And that's a wrap to episode number 502. Thank you again to Brent for joining, and tune in to the next episode.